All right, welcome everyone. My name is Annie Gaines, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Info2Go. Today's session is all about the upcoming census. This event is brought to you by the Idaho Commission for Libraries with funding support through the Institute for Museum and Library Services. Today's session is being recorded and the recording will be made available on our website. From here, I'd like to turn things over to Randy Kemp, our program supervisor, who will be our host today.
Greetings. Thanks everybody for spending some time this Monday morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you happen to be, in whatever time zone you are in. I've sat in on a couple ALA-sponsored webinars about the census. Perhaps some of you have as well. Today's will be focused on Idaho and how it fits into that national scheme of what the census is, why it's important for local communities, and how libraries can participate. We're going to work through some slides together. I'm going to start those up. And we hope to go through what the census is, why it's important, how it impacts local communities, what's in the survey in terms of the content, and how librarians can support the completion of the survey to get a complete count, working with communities about how it's possible to ensure a complete count in your local communities. And we're going to have some examples from 2 libraries in Idaho, and as well as an overview of some frequently asked questions that your library patrons may ask you with some proposed answers, and then have some time for some general Q&A. And again, use the, as Annie said, use the chat box to pose questions, and we'll field those as we go along, as well as towards the end. The voices you'll hear after mine are Karolina's. She gets to work with the U.S. Census Bureau, and she'll explain at a high level what the census is about and how that works here in Idaho. Eric from Marshall Public in Pocatello is going to share examples of the community there, and Lisa will do the same from experience in Latah County. So with that, Karolina, you are up to introduce yourself and walk us through the census.
All right. Hi, can you guys hear me? Great. My name is Karolina Valderrama, and I am right here. I'm waving. I'm with the U.S. Census Bureau. I've been living here in Boise for many years. And so then when I got the opportunity to work for the census, I thought what a neat thing, to contribute to something that's like the largest civic engagement event that we will see, every 10 years or so. So I will be walking you through just the PowerPoint here, the presentation. Randy, you want to do the next? There we go. So this is basically our census motto, the 2020 census. It counts everyone once, only once, and in the right place. So we want to make sure that everybody on April 1st, that you're actually counting yourself where you are at that time and place. So if you are, let's say, vacationing elsewhere, where are you on April 1st? That's the date and the time and the location you should be using is where are you at that time. Next slide. All right, so this is a slow. So why do we do a census? Well, it is mandated by the Constitution, and it's part of our constitutional civic engagement piece where we're supposed to be counting everyone once and only once and in the right place every 10 years. And Randy, I think if you click, yeah, there you go. So key purpose is basically the apportionment of the U.S. House of Representatives seats. So why does the Census 2020 matter? Well, you gotta think about the pieces of the power, the element of power, which is the congressional representation, the reapportionment and redistricting, and then based on those numbers, right? And then that representation, then you have the money that's distributed annually to all of the different states based on the population of each state. In 2010, the George Washington University did an analysis, and they were trying to figure out, okay, what would this look like for each Idahoan, or they did it nationwide. So for Idaho, each person was $1,473 approximately what that would have been, the financing that was distributed to the state would have come out to be about 1,473 per folks in the state. So as we can see, this kind of makes the case that if we have an undercount, that's quite a bit of money that we could stand to lose based on those individuals that just don't want to be counted for whatever that reason may be. So where does this federal funding come from, or where does it go exactly? There's a variety of services and programs that depend on this data. You have transportation, job training centers, schools, programs like Head Start and Early Head Start, foster care centers, senior centers, housing, Section 8. These type of programs depend on the census data, and very much like other nonprofits also depend on the census data so they can make their case for their grants, and things that are something that you would never have thought of as being related to the census is actually your roads, your transportation. So if there's someone that just doesn't see that connection, and I always try to tell them that story of like, well, how did you get here today to the store, to your job? Oh, well, we drove the car or we took public transportation. Then you have to say, well, guess what? That the funding that comes to maintaining those roads comes from the census. So everybody, you know, it's something that you don't even think about. You just drive it every day and you don't realize that that census data actually provides the funding to maintain that road. This time around, 2020, we're going to have a really neat ability to do a lot of the self-responding decennial survey online. So we're going to be able to do it through the internet. You can still do it with the paper form, the phone, or in person. So you'll be able to have those other features that you have done in the past. But to kind of cut down on like the budgets and make things a little bit easier, and basically there's going to be this other program called Roam. We can talk about that later. But Roam essentially will kind of give us an idea of what areas are responding the fastest. So it'll be a live feed into this program that says this area responded very quickly, or these guys are in this other areas lagging behind. Utilizing this new technology will kind of help the census be able to deploy enumerators and non-response follow-up folks to those specific areas to try and make sure that we get the complete count. So you can reply to the survey March 23rd. The census talks about a hard to count populations. What are they? So the census discusses that these are areas that they have identified that are difficult to attain a full and complete count. And it could be for a variety of reasons. We can pick the undocumented immigrants. We can very much are all familiar with their fear of, confidentiality, citizenship, all of those reasons. Tribal members have historically been undercounted. So what we do, partnership specialists like myself, we look at these hard to count populations. We identify partners, community partners, to help us reach those folks, say rural communities. And then I work with, for example, in this case, I work with the libraries with Randy and Jeannie and his team. And we're working to brainstorm ways, how do we reach these rural communities? Or even folks who are experiencing homelessness, they might come to the libraries and be able to complete the survey that way. So it's strategizing those partnerships and leveraging how can we reach these hard to count populations. So throughout the state, we have been working for the past year and a half to form complete count committees, and they're composed of a variety of stakeholders, tribal, state, local governments. And basically we're ensuring that we're promoting the census and the mission of the census, trying to get the word out on the street, essentially, to try and reach the community members throughout the state. So far we have, it's way over the 60 number I have there, but we have over 60 complete count committees throughout the state, and they're all working very efficiently at reaching their specific areas and helping the partnership specialists know and learn more about that population in that area so that we can help support them and provide them with resources. This is the ROAM program, the Response Outreach Areamapper. So as folks are entering their survey online, their self-reporting survey online, this program will actually be live and you'll be able to hover over a specific area and it'll tell you, okay, this area is, 5% of it has already responded, or 25% of residents in this area have responded. So as this is a live kind of auto population of the responses, it'll be nice to know right away so that we can deploy folks to those specific tracked areas. And don't worry, it won't go down to like the house level. It never does that. It only goes down to the census tract level. So, that fear of like, oh my gosh, they're gonna know that this one household didn't respond. No, that's not how it goes. But we'll be able to generally have an idea of an area. And then that way we can say, well, maybe let's strategize and have everybody meet at the library to come and do more outreach if that's what's needed. There's the link down there at the bottom. And then we're hiring in your community. You can click to the next, there you go, it'll have some requirements. You'll have to be a US citizen, 18 years or older, pass a background check and be smartphone savvy. One of the cool opportunities that are going to be coming are mobile questionnaire assistants. So these are going to be folks that are going to be set up in low response areas, and they'll actually be sworn in to the Census Bureau, and they'll be able to fill out the census survey for someone. Let's say an elderly person comes in and they want to do it online, but they're just kind of need help with filling it out. These MQAs will be able to do that and facilitate that, so that librarians don't have the responsibility of doing that. And unless you're a census sworn in staff, you shouldn't be doing or completing a census survey for anyone. You can help us by identifying your community organizations that work with hard to count populations. Educate, obviously. This is right now what we're doing. This webinar is just amazing. You're getting all the resources and being kind of brought up to speed. You can help us by being an ambassador and talking to other folks that the census is confidential, things like that. You can also help by creating a census station for patrons who wish to come into the library at around that time in March, so that they can actually either apply for jobs or they can actually do the survey when it comes around. So identify, educate, and facilitate. So thank you so very much. There's my info. You can call or text me on that phone.
Well, hi, that's me. I'm Eric Cease, and I'm the library director at the Marshall Library in Pocatello. So feel free to contact me if you have questions after this. For my brief presentation, I wanted to take a look at a guide that is available through ALA, Library's Guide to the 2020 Census. And again, it's been updated several times. This is the most recent update. It has a URL on the bottom there that's going to be hard to do. If you really, truly want to get to it, just Google ALA Census Guide and it'll pop right up. Feel free to use the big long thing, but I don't recommend it. It's just way easier to go the other route. There is a section within that document that is about halfway through. It says, what can libraries do and how can libraries prepare? And so I'm going to concentrate on 5 different areas that are covered within the document and talk about what we have done. Connect with Complete Count Committee, prepare for increased use of the library, help community members apply for the jobs, fight misinformation, disinformation, and scams, and increase awareness about the census and its impact. So let's talk to the first one, connect with the Complete Count Committee. We were not originally part of their plans to get together and do things, and I specifically asked to be involved. said that the library needs to be part of this since we're going to be affected and we can be effective. So I have specifically asked to be involved. That's something I would recommend. Every single one of the complete count committees ought to have a library component to it. And if yours does not, just ask. I'm sure that they will be glad to have you because you can do some good things. Be proactive about that. We basically said we need to be here because we're going to be very much interacting with the community as part of this process. So in our particular case, we said, let's do that. And we meet monthly with the CCC meetings in the city here, give our input and talk about what we can do as a library. And in fact, I have one of my staff members also serving on one of the subcommittees, the marketing subcommittee, because she's very savvy with electronics, et cetera, and she knows a lot of good ways to deal with that. So that's really helpful. But again, all of this is proactive. Make sure you're involved and take charge. Say, just indicate you want to be involved. And if you aren't, then I'm sure that won't be an issue. So prepare for increased use. There's lots of things you can do. You know it's coming, and so there will certainly be an increased use of your computers. What we've done at Marshall is that we're going to dedicate a couple of computers specifically for census. They can be used for other things, but if people want to use the census, we will make sure that the screens, et cetera, point to the right things. We talk about setting it up so that they really direct them to the process of completing a form on the census. It's easier to do that if you don't have to switch back and forth between use, and dedicated census computers are going to be part of that. And the other part is training for staff. What can they do? What can't they do? How can they best make sure that when folks are using the census computers, that they know what they're doing, and in addition, the last part of this is a contact list for questions, because there will be some things that we don't know how to answer. And so we're putting together for our staff a list of answers in terms of where do we get these questions answered. And so all those things are really important, and I think that'll set us up really well to be able to prepare properly for the increased use that we are undoubtedly going to get. Randy's talked about the jobs. I think Karolina too. That's really critical, and there's some great paying jobs. I think at least in this area, they're starting at like $17 an hour, and people can do it in addition to a full-time job. Evenings and weekends are great. And so not only do we have a bulletin board that talks about that, we've taken the standard poster that advertises it and does things. We've put it on our website, links to job postings and application. There are bookmarks and there are pamphlets and all these things that have been produced by the Census Bureau to get these things accomplished. We have tried to make sure that as many of those things are available as possible, and they're given a high visibility, because we're already still trying to find people. It's not too late for people to try to become involved in the process of taking the census. And then in addition, we've talked with our staff to officially reach out to potential census workers. If they know people, if there are folks that are coming in or that they know them outside of the library, to let people know the potential there is that exists to work for the census, because it's really valuable for folks to make a few extra bucks and to help serve the community in that way, and to make sure that we get that complete count. So misinformation, disinformation, and scams. We have, again, talked to, as part of the marketing effort that one of my staff is involved in, they're looking at targeting marketing to college students. We have Idaho State University here in town. And students may not or may or may not know where they're supposed to register, et cetera. We reach the local shelters to reach the homeless population. We've We have a fairly sizable unoccasional migrant community that comes through, or various other homeless folks, non-citizens, et cetera, that feel the government intrusion is scary and they're afraid of the reaction. That the government could be watching them, et cetera. We have to work at trying to not only speak to these folks ourselves, but to reach out to people who can speak to them, to let them know how incredibly important it is, and so that the undocumented and homeless, et cetera, can feel comfortable in trusting the government in this particular case. And we also have a fairly sizable Spanish-speaking community, so we're working out to make sure that outreach takes place as well. There's a lot of mistrust, and there doesn't need to be in this particular case. It's a very secure and very necessary effort. So what do we do? I talked a little bit about putting stuff up on the board for the jobs, but just in general, we've got signage. We want to make sure that that's clear and straightforward and everybody that comes in sees it. Again, more census-related swag, like bookmarks, pamphlets, and other things, and we have them available. But we've also taken them to such places as free clinics and other facilities, so that we can get that information out to as many places as possible. We have, not the library itself, but through our marketing involvement, have taken census tables to, there was one at the mall, and we've seen them in community events and various other things. And we're trying to be as participatory in that as we can. Same thing with the university events. My employee has been involved in making sure that the university is made aware of these things. And then we put it out on social media. So we do a lot of those sorts of things. It's just really essential that we be involved, that we become part of the community, that we make the community aware of not only how can they participate, but why they should. And that includes all parts of the community, not just the folks that use the library every day.
Well, good morning. My name is Lisa Egan, and I work for the Latah County Library District. And there's our library right there. I'm the Access Services Manager here at the Latah County Library District. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about how we became involved in this and what we've been doing. About a year ago, our director was interested in the possibility of the library becoming involved with the census, and did some looking around and discovered that no other organization in Latah County had stepped up yet to do anything in regards to the census. And she approached me about it to see if I would be interested in becoming involved. And we decided that this was a great opportunity to show the community that the library is committed to helping our county get a complete count. And so it would also bring awareness to the library and the community, that we're more than just things that you check out from the library, that we're an integral part of the community. So I reached out to the partnership specialist for North Idaho, who is based out of Post Falls, and just called her to get some information. And lo and behold, by the time I got off the phone with her, I was the complete count committee chair for Latah County. So that was a bit unexpected, but it's turned out to be a really great experience and a great way for not only for me to learn about the census, but for the library's interest in the census to become forefront in our community's eyes. So we've been really busy, and I'm going to highlight a few things that we've been doing. I've got way more, but we have monthly meetings, and we've been meeting monthly ever since July. And participating in those meetings are many different people from our community. We have people from the university. We have people from different civic organizations such as AARP and the Lions and the Chamber of Commerce and United Way and Rotary. All different kinds of people are on our committee. churches, school superintendents. We're trying to have a committee that's really diverse, that we can reach a lot of different people. And within those meetings, we brainstorm, discuss what we need to do, what we've done so far, what still needs to be done. And we, as a group, have reached out to various community service organizations. So far, I've personally have spoken to the Lions Club, the Rotary, AARP, the National Association of Retired Federal Employees, the League of Women Voters, Human Needs Council. I was a part of ALA Online Focus Group. I've met this morning with the nonprofit organization group. And this coming Thursday, I am traveling to Boise to speak and meet with the State Complete Count Committee. So we've been really busy. We also applied for and received an Idaho Community Foundation grant, which is going to be super helpful for us because as a library and all these other civic organizations that are involved with us, we don't have the money to spend to do all the things that we want to do. So we applied for a grant and received a grant that we'll use for advertising and printing and purchasing of some children's books. We have quite a few things that we already have earmarked. We're working, excuse me, with University of Idaho representatives. Like Eric mentioned, we too have a university in our community, and since college students are one of the hard to count populations, it's important that we reach the students at the University of Idaho. The last time there was a census, we had poor response from Latah County, and it's estimated based on the last response that about 25% of Latah County residents won't respond this year. And we think part of that is because of our university students who, for one reason or another, choose not to respond. Maybe they don't know about it, or maybe they think their parents are taking care of it for them, or myriad of reasons. But it's important that we reach those students, and one of our goals for our committee is to try to reduce the number of non-respondents from what is predicted. So not only have we been working with the University of Idaho representatives, but we've been contacting local media, medical clinics, senior living facilities, meal sites, food banks, daycare centers, and faith-based organizations within our county. You can turn to the next slide.
Can you see the bookmarks, Lisa?
There we go. Thank you. Let's see, some of the things that our library itself has been doing in relation to local outreach. We did create these bookmarks. Our marketing person here at the library created those for us. And she has, you can't see both sides, but we have these did you knows on the front, and then on the back is Latah County specific information. So we are doing that in a hopes that people will not just see this as a government mandated questionnaire that they need to complete, but see how it actually fits into Latah County and benefits the county. So we have, that's why we have the Latah County information on the back. And you can go to the next slide. We've also been doing programs at the library, and that's what the next slide is going to show you. And we publicized our programs through our library website and flyers and at different public presentations that we've done. And it had mixed results with this, and I decided to go ahead and talk about this even though it wasn't necessarily the success story that I hoped it would be, but despite all of our efforts, we didn't have very good attendance at these programs. The programs themselves were great, and the people who participated got a lot out of them, but there weren't very many people that chose to come, and we don't know why, but sometimes we've all experienced that at the library, that you have a program and it's just not super well received, and you don't know why. And interestingly, we also expressed interest to the newspaper that they talk about these upcoming programs in the paper, and they chose not to print anything about that. So you never know what you're going to get when you try to do a program, but the library has been doing some of these programs, and our featured speaker has been the partnership specialist that I told you about earlier. So we are trying to reach out, and even though we might not reach very many people, maybe we'll reach some key people that will continue to spread the word. So what's next? We have a lot of things coming up that we are planning to do, and that involves some billboard advertising that we're working on. We're also going to be purchasing things like stickers. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but on the census.gov website, they've got great stickers that say like, I count, or things like that. And they're similar to the ones you get when you vote, and you can leave the polling booth with your sticker that says you voted. You can get ones that are census related. So we're going to be purchasing some of those, and then having things like candy and cookies for Census Day. And we're also going to be meeting with additional local organizations like veterans groups and recovery centers, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. We're going to be creating a YouTube ad, at least we are hoping to create a YouTube ad, and trying to reach people through that means that don't perhaps read the newspaper, where we've also had articles. And there's a little book called We Count that we're hoping to purchase and take to medical centers and daycare centers to have available for children. And on Census Day at the library, we have decided that each of our 7 libraries in our community, in our library district, will have computers and volunteers from various civic groups that are available to answer questions or provide assistance. The volunteers know that they can't complete the census for people, but they can provide assistance with logging on if they need to, or answering just simple questions. And we're also going to have computers at 2 different locations on campus, and we're going to be using voting booths that we are borrowing from the county so that we can set up our laptops, in giving people privacy for completing their census questionnaire. And at the libraries, we'll also be featuring fun facts and other information on our website, and we'll be changing those fun facts on a regular basis, and there'll be kind of a did you know type of information, in addition to having a direct link on each computer that'll have some sort of a statement that says something similar to like, have you completed the census yet? If not, you can do that here. And I mentioned before the cookies and candy, that's going to be for Census Day at these computers. You know, once people complete their census, then they can go and grab a sticker and have a piece of candy and carry on with their day. So we have a lot going on. We're a small community, but we have a very active Complete Count committee, and we have a lot left to do, but we're sure hoping that we are going to be able to take that projected approximately 25% of non-responders and reduce that number so that we can get more funding and representation and everything else headed towards Latah County. Thank you.
Lisa, Eric, thanks for those stories about what's happening in your two communities in Idaho. And anyone on the call, if you have questions for either Lisa or Eric, now would be a good time to type those in if you haven't already. And Jeannie, feel free to chime in if there are questions directed at Lisa or Eric. Otherwise, we'll kind of go through the general review of what has been already compiled in terms of conversations those on the call have already had with library colleagues, and kind of general questions, frequently asked questions about the census. This is a pause for Jeannie. So I'll work through these slides. Karolina, Eric, Lisa, feel free to chime in, of course. And some of this has already been covered, so we won't belabor it too much. And Karolina talked about the districting as well as appropriations and monies that come from the count. A reminder that this is in the Constitution. That's why the government wants to count little old me. Security of information, this is a really big deal, and that's in all caps with the trademark sign right next to it, that the Bureau takes the seriousness of information and builds that into all the systems. Every Census Bureau person I've heard from over the last 6-8 months has spoken emphatically about this point of the security of information, and that there's confidentiality of those who are working with the respondents and the enumerators. Lisa was talking about the college students and how those folks would be counted. These either on campus in a dormitory, these group quarters is a technical name for that, and how they'll be counted, as well as in off campus, shared housing, and the whole household gets to complete the census. Similarly, for someone experiencing homelessness, significant effort that the Bureau is putting into place to count people being out and about in the field, doing those counts, partnering with local service providers, shelters, etc. You can see the dates where they'll be out in the community working to count everyone. Eric talked a little about the undocumented folks, and again, making the point about how it's safe and confidential. And another colleague spoke about how working with either undocumented, maybe non-English speakers, that talking about the money or the apportionment for congressional districts, et cetera, doesn't quite hit. But when you talk about schooling, housing, transportation, those are significant issues for these folks to consider as a priority for filling out the census. We've already talked a little about the non-citizens and the purpose and function of that as well. So do I have to answer all the questions? You might get that in your library. And kind of a stock answer is answer as many questions as you see appropriate. Respond to the best of your ability. Follow-up question to that was, what happens if I don't complete the census survey? And census taker and enumerator may come back to get that missing information, again, seeking to have a complete survey rather than a partial one. Karolina talked a little bit about this, that there are options. The online one is the preferred one, but there are other ways to do that. A paper form, phone are two of the other ways. Can a librarian fill out the form for me? No is the answer to that one. Only the individual, the household can do that. There are enumerators, et cetera, who are in the position to do that, but librarians, community members who aren't part of that process are not permitted to help fill out the form. Again, it's seeking for confidentiality, et cetera. Related question, can a child fill out the survey for a non-English speaking or disabled parent? Again, the fundamental answer is no. Karolina, chime in if you have more nuanced answers to these. Multiple languages will be provided. There are ways to get aids and services in that to fill out the form, even if English isn't the first language spoken by the individual filling out the form.
Yeah, and again, think about those mobile questionnaire assistants that are going to be around in those hard to count communities. So we can definitely get a MQA to go to a predominantly Latino community and help them out there too.
Question: do children complete their own surveys? And the answer to that is no. Again, it's it's the family, and so the head of household fills it out for everyone in that household, including the babies. Note here about that they are often missed and undercounted. That's been historically true. So one of those undercounted, hard to count populations. And the dates for responding, the self-responses will start, as Karolina already mentioned, on March 23. April 1 is the goal, to have everyone respond by that date. Continue to encourage people to fill out their survey past April 1. Enumerators will be doing their job to knock on doors to complete those in the month of April. What will the questions be? The Bureau has on their website an interactive feature as well as kind of a PDF of the form. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Some of the highlights include how many people in that residence on April 1, whether it's owned or rented, a phone number for the residents, and then for each resident, name, sex, age and date of birth, ethnicity, and the race. And on the gender question, what if I don't identify with the typical male or female? Will there be other options? And the form has those two options. And the proposal and the suggestion is to respond the best way on how you identify. There's a question about, is it the same as a long form? There are different surveys that are sent out periodically, the American Community Survey in the interim, etc. So the census the survey that's in 2020 is similar to the one that was in 2010, and the long form is not this one.
Question for Karolina. When will the postcards be sent out?
So they're going to be sending them out in waves just because there's so many home addresses in the whole US. So they'll send them out in waves starting March 12th. So each household will get it, all the mailers kind of in waves. Hopefully by March 23rd, everybody should have received that mailer. And then that mailer has a specific code that's connected to the household. And there's an envelope that comes with that. And that envelope is also coded specifically for that household. So it's important that you keep the return envelope together with that survey and submit it and send it back if you're gonna do the paper form. But obviously we're encouraging everybody to do the survey online. So you'll get the mailer will be, the initial will be, you're gonna get a mailer that says, hey, here's the link, do it online. And then there's another mailer that goes on a couple weeks after that, and it'll have a reminder with that link and the paper format. So the first wave of mailers are gonna specifically be more of that link and online feature.
It's already been mentioned, but is the citizen question included? And the answer is no, after lots of back and forthing in courts and conversation. So that question is about the citizenship is not on the survey. Question about spending part of a year in one place and part in another, what's considered to be the residence, and it is about April 1. Karolina talked a little bit about this too. So it's on April 1.
I have one more question for Karolina, I think. What will be done to reach out to H-2A workers that don't have an address?
Right. I think this is where we're going to be depending a lot of our community partners to fill out, help us identify those populations. I've contacted and talked with the Mexican consulate to try and figure out how to get that information to guest workers and things like that. The country of Mexico also conducts a census every year, every 10 years, along kind of the same thing as the US does, around the same time. And so conversations were had, hey, do we count them here or do we count them in Mexico? So then I'm working with them, with the Mexican consulate, to help us disperse information to those folks, so that they know where to go, how to fill it out, and that sort of stuff.
So keep firing your questions
Yeah.
and typing your questions in the chat box. We can attend to those at this time. Thanks, Jeannie, for fielding those. You know, while some of those are coming in, Lisa or Eric, any other successes, failures, lessons learned to share with folks who might want to take up some more active role in their communities over the next handful of weeks? Stories that come to mind as you presented or heard the questions asked, that would be helpful. Feel free to chime in on anything.
Well, this is Eric. I think it really is just trying to do what we can for the state and getting that information out there. As I talked about, there are a lot of people that are afraid of the confidentiality, and they shouldn't be. And so not only do we have materials or other things that point to that, but it's really important that we make sure that information is given to the patrons that we talk to on a regular basis, who may be the contact for folks who have some concerns about those sorts of things. So it really is a lot about community outreach, not just officially, but importantly, unofficially.
I can respond to, this is Lisa. As Eric said, it's important to get the word out. And one thing that we're doing here in Latah County that we've decided might help, because we do have quite a few people in North Idaho that are hesitant to complete the questionnaire, is to try to bring it home and not just use the flyers that are available on the census site. While they're great, and we've certainly distributed many of them, we would also like to have it be more of a local feel. And so we're developing a flyer that we can hand out that is taking little bits and pieces from several different flyers that we have gotten from the census site, and then putting at the bottom of it Latah County Complete Count Committee and Latah County Library District, our logos and information, so that people can see that we are talking about something that's real and that it's here and that it's for us locally, and not just some very broad governmental questionnaire, even though that's what it is. But in order for people to see the tie-in to where we live and the services that we receive here, we thought that it might be helpful to develop something that's more Latah County specific and the ways that these things will affect us. So that's one way that we are trying to reach out and bring it closer to home.
And like Lisa said, RCCC is working on specific outreach documents, questionnaire stuff that is related to very specific school districts. So the different parts of our area have different school districts that they're served by, and we're trying to tailor our message to each of the individual school districts so that it's really clear that this is a local thing too.
We have one more question in the chat. How are on-campus students at universities counted, and by whom?
So they're also counted under group quarters, which is similar to how hospitals or homeless shelters, places like that are going to be counted. So the census will be sending out information to probably the residence halls. There's a different operation that has process and policies and procedures, how they do the group quarters for universities. So then they'll start counting those folks there.
In addition to the website at ALA that Eric particularly mentioned about that particular resource, ALA has a set of other flyers, handouts, facts, how-tos, etc. Great resources there, as well as the main census site and the subpage with numerous outreach materials. Lisa's talked about those as well. Each of the presenters on today's webinar are also resources. Reach out to any of us with questions and we'll try and get you directed to your answers like any good librarian would. And stay tuned for other opportunities in your community, and looking forward to hearing stories of how libraries across Idaho made a difference. If there are other questions, type those in and we'll hear from Jeannie on those. Otherwise, we're at the end of our content. And Annie, may turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Just waiting for a couple questions. Seeing no questions, I feel okay bringing this webinar to a close. So thank you everybody for attending. I'm going to turn off recording.
Thank you. Bye.